Hi, class. How are you doing today? It is my hope your week 7 and module 7 is progressing well and that you're off to a good start in completing your discussions and reading your 7-2 proposal and putting it together. All right. So, what I wanted to do this time was create a kind of like a short version of the instructions because I know it's very lengthy, isn't it? But it's very lengthy. And I think that if I can pull out some keywords to kind of get you going in terms of how to format a nonprofit proposal for funding, it'll give you a better insight in terms of all of, I should say, compiling all of the chapter readings, assigned chapter readings in your ebook, as well as those additional resources, such as the National Organization for Human Services, our ethical standards to be incorporated in the paper. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of give you like a walk through, a step by step walk through. So I encourage that as you are completing your paper, feel free to have my video parked in certain areas of your paper so you can know exactly how to complete it. This is about the closest I can get to actually showing you how to do this work, other than a conference call. But the creativity and the knowledge and the skills and all of those key elements on how to format the paper and make your proposal shine, it really relies on your knowledge and your creativity and what you've learned in the class. That is about as far as any professor can go. What you put in your paper and how you align it with what you've learned is actually done based on your own creative knowledge and the key information that has been given to you. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk you through it. And if you have any questions or concerns, and it's my hope it's very minimal because I'm going to do my best to share as much as I can because in writing, there is no yes or no, there is no right or wrong answers. It's all based on the competence and the knowledge you have acquired from the course readings, from the assignments, and from the discussions, and how well you articulate it into your final paper. Does that help? All right, so let's begin, okay? So I am going to share my screen and let's see if hopefully it'll share really nice. All right, so you got those pen and papers out or computers or what have you. Whatever you need to do to make some note taking, I would encourage to do so. It's a note taker myself. So, all right, so let's share the screen and let me see if I can condense my get it down to the got it down to the bottom. Perfect, perfect. Let me get me up to the top. There we go. All right, so let's start out with, just gonna kind of brush the discussions real quick. So let's start out with, let's see if I can, if I move this over, will it actually allow me to pull the discussions? Let's see. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at your, maybe it's at the bottom. Hold on 1 second. Let's put this back at the top. And here we go. All right, so let's take a look at your um, assignment instructions. Let me get them. All right, here we go. Taking a look at the discussion. All right, made it. Okay. All right, so for this particular Module 7 discussion, you're going to kind of introduce yourself as if you're presenting a strategic plan to an agency director. And I probably know what your first question might be is, Dr. Bell, can I use the same information I've always used during the term? The answer is yes. pull what you can, revisit, feel free to use your same agency. It's okay. The goal is to make sure that you are very knowledgeable and you have gained the information that was to be acquired as it relates to the course objectives. So yes, definitely. All right. In your discussion, you're going to provide a name of the agency, your assumed role within it, give a little professional introduction, include who you are while you're presenting. Remember that you're establishing rapport. So the goal is to make nice, but not be in the way that you're constantly saying I, because remember, your nonprofit is a business. So you have an administration. So it's not I, it's the agency or the nonprofit or the organization. So that's kind of how you would establish rapport, especially when you're speaking to other stakeholders and you want them to invest in funding your nonprofit. Write a brief summary of the relevant qualifications and experiences. Feel free to kind of elaborate with that. We're kind of getting an idea of this, so it's not in truth in the beginning. It's just kind of like doing like a draft example of how you would present yourself. And then don't forget to identify a way that you can establish credibility. Like, I am the one that is seeking the funding, but I'm also the one that has the knowledge and the skills to know what to do with it. Okay. And not just because funding doesn't necessarily go to administration, it goes for the people that's enrolled in your program. Okay. And then, of course, when you do your responses to your peers, just make sure that you identify those key elements that help to create an even more engaging introduction. Make sure that you answer is, the information and other elements that can be used from your ebook to enhance the authenticity and professionalism of the introduction. And also make sure that there's add any additional information or context that can help strengthen the qualifications, like really what makes you qualify for that. Feel free to utilize your course textbook in terms of how executive directors could present themselves or should present themselves, and pull any relevant information that can help support your discussion. Because in the end, the goal is to utilize that ebook in the nonprofit book to assist in ensuring that you do know the skills that it takes and you do know how to have those credentials and represent the nonprofit to seek that funding from those stakeholders. So that's a quick visit from your discussion assignment. And I think you have been doing pretty great. I've seen a lot of good ones up there. So keep posting, but I just want to revisit it. Okay, so now let's get to that final paper. All right, so here is your 7-2 final project, and it's actually an organizational change project proposal. But what I did was I condensed this assignment so that when you get ready to write it, you will have a better understanding, because a lot of this information in this assignment actually revisits, if you really, take a look at it and compare it to previous modules, it revisits everything that you have and supposed to have learn how to write and formulate, or should I say articulate. So please make sure that you look at my feedback, definitely or incorporate my feedback because it aligns with what's in the course text. And then feel free to utilize other areas of the course text or the ebook to assist you in writing your 7-2. Everything that I'm saying, let me make a disclaimer here. Everything that I'm saying is to assist and provide helpful tips in order to be successful in completing this assignment. The rest relies on your ability to research, share the knowledge, articulate the knowledge you've learned throughout the course, and to formulate format a nonprofit proposal that seeks funding based on the services and culture, organizational culture of your agency. Don't worry, we're going to get through it. Okay. All of these sections right here pretty much revisits what you've done before. So it was placed here again to remind you that you are compiling all of the assignments that you had to write in the course to create 17-2 final paper. Okay. So don't panic because you see all of this. I really, really condensed it for you. Okay. Be mindful that once you finish your paper, I'm just giving some logistics right now. Put it down and come back the next day and try to grade yourself and see if you have any of these key things that are mentioned in your paper. And remember, in order to talk about an agency's culture, that can't come from your mind because there are rules on how a nonprofit should be run. Compare it against the course text. Human service programs, compare it against what you've learned from NOHS. Current workforce, this is not something that you feel that's the current workforce. This is the current workforce that is mentioned in your ebook or your course text. Compare it, as well as the structure, the budget, the funding, and so on and so forth. So as you're going through the rubric, when you finish your paper, kind of like go back and grade yourself. Because if you put it down and you come back to it the next day, you may have clearer thinking in terms of how you can shape it so much simpler. Okay. All right. So now let's dig into the way I did it. All right. So I'm going to go to, let's get rid of this. I don't need that. I'm going to go to the paper now. So let's get rid of that. And let's bring this up a little bit and let's go to the paper. So let me put this up here. All right. So now this is actually my way of reviewing the announcement. Well, it's actually my way of posting an announcement, but instead of actually posting it, I want to give you a video announcement again. Okay. So, all right. So we made it to the module 7. And now as you begin to prepare your organizational change project proposal, and this is actually could be part of the heading, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I would like to take a moment to review the assignment instructions and provide some APA helpful tips. So let's begin. All right, APA is going to be incorporated as I'm talking. What you need to know before the beginning of this assignment. Here are the key things. The title of the paper should be Organizational Change Project Proposal - insert the name of your agency, organization, or nonprofit. So that's the first thing you need to know. As addressed in your regular assignment instructions, this paper is to model the role you, as the executive director, as well as how you speak of your administration, your board of directors at a small nonprofit human services agency. So you're actually creating this proposal to speak on behalf of the whole nonprofit, including your board of directors. Okay, I've already talked about your administration. In addition, you will, along with your administration, demonstrate the ability to craft a proposal that will influence the organization's programs, program services, and it says programmatic, but I use the word program because it's the same thing. Organizational culture, workforce structure, funding, which means the actual budget it takes to run this nonprofit, and sources. And you're going to do that while maintaining legal and ethical standards. And this is where in your ebook chapters, it states the board of directors are the ones that oversee the legal and the ethical compliance of a nonprofit. And then, of course, it's going to be a nonprofit for human services. All right. Please note, this 7-2 final project submission, which is your organizational change project proposal, is a compile of all the assignments submitted from module 1 to module 6. And I'm going to try to get module 6 to you as fast as I can. Um, what you should include in your paper. Now, here's where we're actually looking at the paper, and you want to know what to include. Definitely a page. So let in any proposal you submit, you have to create a title page. It has to be the title of your agency, but for the purposes of this class, I already showed you how to do your title page, and of course your name and Southern New Hampshire University, and then please use Dr. Bell. Name is too long. That really helps. All right, so let's go back to what you should include in your paper. Format your paper, including the title page, the headings. If you do not have headings in your paper, let me share this little disclaimer. I will have no idea what answers what as it relates to the assignment instructions. I will go on a search, probably just like any faculty member, to try to see if I can locate the correct information. If I can't, then it gets marked either wrong or missing because I have no documentation of a heading to lead me. So including those headings is very important when you're compiling a project proposal for a nonprofit. So I encourage you to please do so. Citing information from the ebook and chapter readings, this is the heart of writing this paper, is to show whether you met the course objectives or the objectives for the course and each weekly objective. The only way that can be determined is if you articulate what you've learned in the course ebook. It is very beneficial to look at those bold fonts. And I'm going to stress it again. It is very beneficial to look at those bold fonts and those bold titles because they're the ones that actually or I should say they are the key components to how a nonprofit is run, the many elements that entails a nonprofit. Identify that as it relates to your own. Does that help? Okay. All right. So you're going to also include a separate reference page. Now, this is APA formatting. Reference pages is always on the next blank page. So if the body of the paper is page 2 to page 5, then your references should be on page 6. They should never go on the same paper. And that's very important, especially in the field of human services, because if you do really, they use APA. So if you really don't know how to format your papers and in any work that you're doing, like if you're going for an interview and they give you writing samples and you're not aware of how to format using APA, they consider that in the determination of whether they want to hire you or not. So I've seen it time and time again. So definitely learn how to format your papers using APA. If you're looking to start a nonprofit and you want to write a grant, or you want to create a proposal for a grant to submit for funding, if it's federal funding, you're going to see that they honor APA, and most foundations honor APA too, especially in the human services field. Okay, so just a little tidbits I'd like to share with you. So let's talk about what to include in the body of the paper. So now we're in the body of the paper. Okay, in the beginning, you're definitely going to include an introduction. Center your introduction in the middle. Main headings that introduce a topic goes in the middle of the paper. If it's a heading that is still a component of that topic, this is what we call subheadings that go to the left. Okay, so you'll hear me say that time and time again. So what I just did was define it for you. All right, so the first subheading you're going to use is the current state of the agency. And I'm going to just kind of sum it all the way through. Impact, definitely create these as subheadings to the left side. And this is going to all fall under the introduction to the proposal, just as it's shown in your assignment instructions. Of course, the state of the agency. Now, for the first section, the current state of the agency. This is in this section, you're going to remember to describe the agency in terms of the current workforce, identify your budget. Anytime you hear budget, that means numbers, and also the funding sources. So if you're seeking funding from specific areas, definitely share that or share where you're seeking to get funding from. And that's normally the reason why you're doing a proposal, is because you're wanting to write it to a specific agency to seek funding. Also, remember to clearly describe how do they impact the organizational culture. They say culture in your assignments, but we know it's the organizational culture because it's the culture of the agency you're describing. Take a look at how the agency's culture impact the programs offered and address that in this section as well. Here is my disclaimers. Definitely, definitely, definitely show this because it's in there. Please include cited information, including those bold terms, and clearly demonstrate your knowledge of the key terms, key components. Talk about those management theories and how they help to understand the behavior of your staff and other key elements that is deemed necessary to run a successful nonprofit with the culture, the organizational culture you're giving, and how they provide services to clients. Hopefully that helps. All right, so the second one is impact justifies the proposal. So in this particular section, you're going to remember to justify the implementation of the program and the need for services, which is pretty much your proposal. Using the workforce structure, nonprofit budget, anytime you hear budget, that means numbers. Funding as it relates to the organizational culture and include the potential impact on program services offered by the agency. So for this particular section right here, this is research. You're going to look at the social problem that your nonprofit is seeking to resolve. So if it's food insecurity and you have a food bank, so you're going to justify the proposal by addressing how the food bank can meet the needs for services, how your food bank utilizing the workforce structure, the administration that's there, and the budget can impact, which really means how can they help make a difference in the way services are provided through the programs. So that's pretty much what it's asking for. And with this particular section, you may want to pull some research that you may find from the Shapiro Library, or go back to your particular paper where you've utilized some resources and pull the information out of that. Definitely reading my feedback to make sure you incorporate it in there if I shared some very helpful information to justify the need for those programs in your community. Of course, when we look at the agency mission, make sure you create a heading, a subheading to the left, and then share some information on how this agency, well, first things first, definitely state your agency mission. And please note, your agency mission, according to your readings, is a one statement sentence that entails the social problem, the target population, and the program services that your agency is designed to build or is designed to serve and, of course, have potential outcomes. And you can also add those like to seek specific outcomes. But know that your mission statement is a one statement sentence. So if you don't really know what that is, I will go back to the course text, but just Google some mission statements just to kind of get an idea. Look at some other nonprofits and see what their mission statements are. But notice that they also add mission and an explanation, or mission and a vision. So for this particular section, I want you to identify your mission statement first and kind of give a little bit of insight as to why that mission statement was created. And here's where we go, where it says right here, clearly demonstrate the relationship between the agency's mission and the community it serves. So this is where we describe why the mission was created. That statement was created. Okay. Please include cited information. Go to your ebook. Let the ebook help you explain this. So go to your ebook and pull out key information, paying close attention to the bold font for the missions and the values and all of those key areas. And then clearly explain why that mission statement was developed and how it can be so beneficial if it's carried out to provide services to the community. All right, so moving on. Trends. Trends is definitely research. So you're looking at the trends of what has been done in terms of, I'm going to go back to the example of the food bank. What has been done with the programs that are currently being implemented in the food bank example that I gave you, and then how that has trended over time. Like, has it improved? Has it helped? Has it fed many people? Has it provided so many unique services? So this particular section here, you may have heard me say in your paper to please make sure you use research, because you cannot talk about trends without identifying research. If you look in your ebook under the word trends, you're going to find a lot of citations, because that's how you address the trend of something. Keep in mind when you're looking at the trends of costs, it spends money. So just look for research that can show how the funding has benefited. And just if you have any issues with that, definitely reach out to me and let me know. That's what I'm here for. All right. The state of the agency. All right. In this section, you're going to talk about how the proposal or the program or the program services will alter the state of the agency, and describe the key areas or key ideas that the proposal or the program will use to positively impact the people it is serving. Remember to include historical and current trends. So historical means like taking those same services and speaking about what happened in the past. But you can't talk about it without citing it, because you have to pull the evidence that it takes to show whether those services were effective or not. And then look at the current trends, like what is happening now. So, and of course, that comes from research too. So just kind of search those two words in the Shapiro Library and see what you come up with, and take the best articles and pull that information to just address that area. Okay. All right. Hopefully this has been helpful. Okay. Now we're to the workforce structure. All right. Let's get through this. And I'm going to hold you long. All right. So you're going to create this as a main heading because it identifies the next section. And then begin this section by providing information regarding the structure of your personnel, your organizational culture, the retention and the recruitment, of course, that is provided or overseen by human resources management. So always know human resources oversees the retention, the recruitment. They'll pretty much oversee the hiring, the training, all of those key things. The executive director does not do that, and neither does the board of directors. Look at the trends over time. So that's based on library research. See what you can find in the Shapiro Library about how effective human resources has been in contributing hiring in the workforce structure of your program services. So hopefully that helps. And again, the culture, the structure and the culture, definitely heading to the left side. In this section, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to kind of like revisit, talk about the structure and organizational culture. What was considered when they were created? Like when you developed that, what did you consider? Pull that from your ebook, because ebooks gives a history as to how something was developed. So pull that from your ebook, definitely include citation. Examine the relationships between agencies, the culture of the agency and the workforce. The book actually does that for you, because when you're examining the relationship, you're examining what's in compliance to make it work versus what's not in compliance to make it work. So having that appropriate staff, having the board of directors to oversee it, all of those key elements, pay attention to the bold terms. because they are the components of what it takes to run an effective nonprofit. All right. When we get to personnel and recruitment, this is where you go to your human resources management section, and of course for retention too. And I mean, read it and share it. Some students actually go and look at. They actually, let me say it like this: they actually start with the ebook, and they will share some insight on how human resources management is effective in identifying retention and recruitment. And then they'll go pull articles to share how more effective it is in helping to structure the workforce of that nonprofit so it can be effective in providing services to the clients in that community. So feel free to do the same. Again, when we look at current trends, so now we're looking at the trends as it relates to human services and human resources management. So as you know, your current trend for this particular section is going to be research on the effectiveness of human resources, pretty much. So go to your book and pull it out, share that insight, and definitely do some research and incorporate that research. You can also incorporate the book, but incorporate some research about how effective human resources has been in working within a nonprofit. Okay. All right. So when we look at the budget and funding, so we're going to center this heading. This is the last one. So we made it to the last one. So you're going to begin by creating your heading and then starting from the left, your first part, you're going to provide information regarding how the budget and funding impacts the delivery of services and the quality of the programs and grant funding. Definitely go back to your ebook and pull that information out because you really don't have to think hard about it. If you've read all of the chapters from module 1 to module 6, it should automatically click on how to address your budget and how to address how funding can impact, which means make a difference in service delivery and the way the programs are created to provide services to the clients in the community. Does that help? So definitely try to do that. When you're talking about the delivery of services, which is right here, create another subheading so I can know. We're talking about the relationship between the agency's budget, which means the money, and how delivery of programs, services to clients are impacted by the ability to get the funding to do the work to make a difference. So definitely go back to your course text, your ebook, and look for funding and how funding can impact the outcome of program services and the clients that are served in an agency, a nonprofit, or an organization, and incorporate that in this section. But still, feel free to be creative as long as it aligns with the budget, making sure that the delivery of the program services are impacted, but because there's a relationship between the two. And then provide an explanation as the need for it to get that money. Like, why should this nonprofit have this money? Uh, Basically, I would suggest that if you want to incorporate like some articles or some evidence-based research to say there's a need in this community and there's a reason why we need this funding to address this need because it's not being addressed by any other agency or organization or business in the community, feel free to do so. Incorporate some of those evidence-based cited sources or incorporate some of the information and cite the article where you've gotten the information from. Definitely in this section, when we talk about delivery of services, there's an ethical way we do things. So we just don't deliver services for no apparent reason. There's always an ethical way, and there's always a board. So definitely look at the standards, the National Organization for Human Services Standards. So kind of like peruse through their website because they can give you a lot of good information that can make you state your ground in terms of how we function and how we function in compliance based on our ethical uh, board or our ethical guidelines from our own professional board. And this is a disclaimer. The board is different from the board of directors. Board of directors actually oversee the agency. They make sure that is in compliance. But when you look at the National Organization for Human Services, this makes sure that anybody that comes into your agency or nonprofit to work for your nonprofit and provide services to the clients, and they're licensed to do so, your NOHS helps to ensure that they do it ethically and not to harm or to exploit any potential clients that's in your business. They can get in trouble by this board. So that's pretty much what it means. And it says it on its website. So take time out to peruse through the website to see if you can locate that information. If you have trouble, definitely email me and let me know. I'm here to help. Okay. Now, when we get to the quality of services, this is where, again, we're going to pull out one or maybe two specific ethical standards from the NOHS. And we're going to talk about how they contribute to the way we make decisions that are in compliance and aligns with the services being provided to the clients. It's going to talk about how we make sure it's done the right way. So just kind of to sum that up. And of course, how it's done based on the budget that we say that's being allocated in the nonprofit and being able to pay for the services that is provided. So in an example, we don't take 75% of that and we pay the staff, but there's really no resource money available for the clients. Now that's unethical and that is can get you in trouble because all funding that's approved is really designed to pay a specific portion to the staff or the administration, including the executive director and board of directors, but the majority of it should go to the clients. And so when we look at ethical standards, this is where we do right, not wrong. So does that help? All right. Next is grant funding. Okay, so when we look at grant funding, definitely create a heading on the left side of your paper, the subheading. In this section, remember to analyze the relationships. Analyze means to synthesize. Synthesize means to compare and contrast. Analyze the relationship between grant funding and the delivery of services. Does grant funding actually helps it? And if so, how? If it doesn't, how? So definitely talk about that in describing how the grant funding helps to address gap. Is there any additional money that can provide something that is outside of what the program actually does? For example, I gave an example of the food bank. Let's say I have a family system or maybe several families that come into the food bank and they may need some clothing or they may need some transportation. Is there some side money in the miscellaneous funding that can be able to address those gaps? This is where I will go into this particular section and talk about how the funding is available for the main program services, but additional funding has been placed aside. And of course, I did give an insight about chapter 12 being the most helpful chapter to get you to understand the budgeting and the funding. But this is where you can talk about like there's additional funding on the side to help address the gaps, such as the lack of clothing or the lack of any other assistance that your agency doesn't provide, but keeps a little funding aside in case there's a need for an emergency from the clients being served in your nonprofit. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Definitely use your ebook. It's in there. Cite that information. If the paragraphs are not cited, it's two things. If it mentions anything about the book, it's going to be plagiarism and you can be charged for that. But if it doesn't say anything about the book and it's all about your program, it's not going to show how well you've learned this course content because you're not articulating it back into your proposal as addressed in your assignment instructions. So make sure you do that, okay? Future funding sources. Now, when we get to future funding sources for this paper, here's the key word: sources. If you look at the definition of sources, I mean other places where you can get money from. So future funding sources. In this section, describe how your program may impact future funding sources. But basically, it's saying describe how future funding sources, such as blank, 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 can help impact the services provided by your program to the clients or to the consumers in the community. Include what's been done before and what's happening now. What's been done before is known as historical. What's happening now is current trends. And remember, use the ebook to help you develop this. And now we've made it to the conclusion. So, believe it or not, this conclusion actually has two subheadings. Normally, conclusions do not have a heading, but when you're writing a proposal for funding, sometimes they do come with headings. So, they want headings to break it up. But the good thing about the conclusion is it's just a summary. So, all you have to do is go back through and pull the information to answer it. So, look at those future program service deliveries, what has been done, and summarize how it's going to positively impact the program. How is the funding going to impact the program? How's the in the program when we're talking about is how it's going to impact the people who's receiving the services? How it's going to impact those who come to receive the services, get the outcomes that they're seeking the agency, the organization, or the nonprofit for. Does that make sense? And then also revisit the parts of the proposal where it talks about the influence of the organizational culture and how it will impact future programs that the board and the executive director, the program manager, or the administration decides to add on. So just remember those and kind of talk about that a little bit. It's no citation. This is strictly from summarizing and sharing some key ideas. Also, the trends, revisit those trends. Look at how they will benefit the community and say, what's going on now and how my agency fall into place is making a big difference. It will make a big difference. Or if it's created, it will make a big difference. So just look at the trends over time and just say, just kind of share some insight based on what you research in comparison to your agency now and how it's going to be a big impact in helping people in the future. And there's no citation needed. All right, we made it to the end. So I definitely revisited every single component, and I think that's it. So it is my hope that this has truly been helpful for you. Like I said, this is the best way I can assist you, other than literally participating in a conference call, which I'd be happy to do so. So if you have any other questions or concerns about your assignments or anything, you need some help brainstorming, what have you, I encourage that you please call me and not share long, drawn out emails because it really takes up a lot of time for me to help your peers in responding back when a quick phone call can take you straight to the chapter. We can brainstorm it. I can get those creative skills kicking, and then you can definitely move forward with so much peace. Okay. All right. With that being said, this concludes the presentation. Email me or feel free to give me a call during my office hours anytime you have any questions about your paper. I'm here with you till the end of the term. Take care and have an awesome weekend. Bye.